Hi, I'm Beth Pelletier here on Focus On with Jim Relkin, the Chief Executive Officer of the Red Cross. I'm going to ask him some questions about what's been going on lately. So nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here in your studio.
The September 11th event has challenged the entire community. What have been some of the specific challenges to the St. Clair County?
On the very first day, Beth, on September 11th, and we'll all remember where we were that day, immediately we could see that as the news was again being reported, that we would start getting phone calls right at our own chapter here in St. Clair County. And within an hour the phone started ringing and people started offering help. Since September 11th, we have fielded over 4,000 phone calls and offers of help from companies, individuals. And so the challenge to nearly 100 volunteers, and our staff are all volunteers, was to respond to those nearly 4,000 inquiries. All of them, again, people reaching out wanting to help, from donating blood to money, and yet 4,000 people to talk with. Clearly a challenge over the last 2.5, 3 months.
That's great that you had so many volunteers.
Great stuff, yes.
How did the local chapter respond to all the calls, and how many people were involved in helping answering the phones and stuff?
We had 100 volunteers involved for about the first 3 weeks. We even brought in additional phone lines that gave us 8 phones to work with, and again about 100 volunteers sorting out all the phone calls. We actually had, Beth, we had 13 different categories of calls. And during this time we had some calls that were, again, maybe not Red Cross related, but people trusted us and called us. We had one lady call and said she had an American flag in her basement, wanted to know if we thought she could sell it in a garage sale so she could raise money for the National Relief Fund. But people were calling because they trusted us and we'd give them honest answers. So we had all the challenges of the calls and all the challenges of the different kinds of calls over that time period.
How much money was raised by the local chapter, and how much can you keep for your local expenses for such a big disaster?
Well, that's an excellent question. In St. Clair County, we raised nearly $300,000. We kept none of the money for administrative costs. And obviously people say, well, what costs would there be? Well, you'd have telephones, copy machines. If we were paying employees, which we were not, because we don't have any employees, you'd have the overhead of people working additional hours. So 100% of the dollars raised by schools, by individuals and companies and organizations throughout St. Clair County, all of those dollars went on to the national relief effort, and we're very proud of that. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Did anyone from your chapter go to New York to work on helping clean up and work on the disaster?
Beth, no, we didn't send anybody from our national team, but around the country, and particularly in the state of Michigan, about 600 volunteers from the state of Michigan have either been to New York and back and have gone back again for another tour of duty. Basically, if you go out as a volunteer, you go for 3 weeks. And then nationwide, there are 25,000 Red Cross volunteers working still on this disaster and will be working for weeks and months ahead.
Wow. What exactly were some of the things the Red Cross would be doing there in New York?
Well, a lot of what we do, and people don't realize that we do, and that is this direct assistance to families, talking with families, developing a profile on what the family's needs may be. Helping families connect with other family members is a big part of what we do. In St. Clair County, as an example, I personally dealt with an emergency call on what's called a disaster welfare inquiry, a family that lives in Romeo. Now, the call was outside of our jurisdiction, but we took the call and handled it where a young lady was killed in the Trade Center. Her family lives in Romeo, and this young lady's father was in New York, and it had been confirmed that she was actually deceased. And the request to our office was to get a Red Cross caseworker to the home in Romeo to be with the mother, so that when the father called to give what she already knew was the news, but that we'd have a Red Cross caseworker, a mental health worker, with the family when that announcement was, to use a better term, officially made to the mother. So that's a big part of what we do, disaster welfare inquiry, again, immediate needs. All the firefighters, all those workers, the feeding of all those people. We have served 100,000 meals per day since the disaster, so consequently a huge task.
Well, we're going to show a special film about the work of the Red Cross. Would you like to tell anything about the film before we show it?
Well, I've seen it several times, and it's a moving film of the work of the people of New York, and also the people who worked at the Pentagon and in Pennsylvania, in the outpouring of support of the American people to the American Red Cross.
All right, well, let's take a look at it right now.
Thank you, Beth.
Hello, and welcome to this special edition of Red Cross Quarterly. I'm Jim Topping, volunteer chair of the Chapter Services Network. Now, as we all know, last week's regularly scheduled quarterly was canceled due to the events surrounding the devastating terrorist attacks on September 11th. It included the World Trade Center in New York, at the Pentagon, and in Somerset, Pennsylvania. So we dedicate this September Red Cross Quarterly to the memory of those who perished, their families and friends, and to emergency workers and to the spirit of those who volunteered to help. With that in mind, we humbly showcase just some of our Red Cross colleagues, employees, and volunteers who have shared the privilege of serving, of enabling people to help each other and themselves in their grieving and healing. Our video crews have gathered images and sounds that will hopefully convey from the Red Cross perspective how the week following these disasters unfolded. Join them now as they take us on this journey.
A day we'll never forget. Without warning, unthinkable tragedies strike New York, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. The loss of life, almost unbearable. Against an eerie landscape, rescue workers begin to cut and shift through the rubble, hoping for at least some survivors. The grief is all-consuming. A nation is stunned. A disaster unlike any other. But people need help, and the Red Cross responds. The Disaster Operations Center swings into action. Staff gather information while mobilizing resources. DSHR volunteers are recruited. Family welfare call centers are established. Family assistance centers are opened. In response to the Pentagon disaster, Washington, D.C. area chapters quickly mobilize.
As we've gotten more information and begun providing services, we've been able to send out fairly large teams.
Okay, so that would be physical help.
For the most part of the day, we've been supporting the emergency workers themselves, feeding them, getting them water.
They asked for dry socks, they asked for gloves, they asked for chapstick, they've asked for sunscreen, they've asked for meals, they've asked for mental health counseling, and we've provided all of it to them.
All right, thanks. We appreciate everything.
No problem.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
In New York, the challenges are staggering.
I think when I first arrived, one of the first things that went through my mind is, my God, how are we ever going to help all these people? There's so much to do.
The response is massive and immediate, as Red Cross volunteers provide assistance to rescue workers and others in need of help.
I knew that I needed to respond. My husband also is a disaster mental health worker, and we both knew we needed to respond.
I felt that my service would be more meant to get by helping out, giving them water, giving them gloves. Go up on the rocks, say, hey guys, here's something to drink.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Water, anyone?
Drive it up over here.
And then we'll load it up. Thank you.
But it's amazing to see how an organization like the Red Cross can quickly mobilize.
We have food, water, anything that they need, we have it. And if we don't have it, we can definitely see how we can get it.
The Red Cross has really been a ministry of service because the Red Cross has just been providing for the needs of these men. It's the Red Cross that's holding these guys up. That cup of coffee, that power bar, that those change of socks, it might seem small, but it's not. It's tremendous.
One common sight, lines of people waiting to help. People want to do something, anything, and the Red Cross is their beacon.
The number of people in the New York City area who have volunteered has been fantastic.
The Red Cross's ministry is to help others in relief. It's everywhere. So it's the first place I thought of.
I feel the need to do something. This is the only organized way of volunteering and getting involved and helping out.
We'll arrange for the supply of bulk raw food materials.
On the very first day, I was assigned to assisting with the LDV office and the training office. We processed close to 7,000 walk-up volunteers just in our building alone. We're dealing with an emergency situation where there's been a great loss of life. We want to make sure that the right people are going out to do the right job at the right place at the right time.
I really wanted to be able to participate and do something for this disaster, and then in the future for the Red Cross also.
At the Pentagon, efforts to support rescue workers grow, even as fires continue to burn.
So caffeine, 15 cases of Gatorade. I'm handling our supply logistics right now. We've had so many donations, I can't even begin to tell you how much we have, and it's kind of everywhere. So today we've taken the time to inventory all of it, take stock of what we have, where it's at, and while we've been doing that, we've simultaneously been filling all requests for replenishment of supplies as they've come in throughout the day.
I arrived on Tuesday with the other first two mental health volunteers that were here. And basically we've been doing a lot of triage, helping with mass care on the inside of the fenced-in area.
As they do their work and they come out, we'll catch them and we'll say, hey, look, how you doing? Come and sit down with us for a moment. Most of them might have 40 to 45-minute break. We don't do intensive counseling at this point. What we do is to try to help a person kind of, deal with the situation, deal with what they're seeing. We're trying to get them away from the work that they do so they can have a moment to recoup, to restore, to re-energize.
But along with volunteer spirit, a harsh reality. Thousands of missing, with loved ones in search.
This is our center, hotline center, where we have volunteers, mostly mental health professionals, who are taking incoming calls from people, families and friends looking for missing persons.
We're working to identify people who are missing and who are perhaps in the hospital or unaccounted for.
It's not an easy job, but these volunteers know it has to be done. And they are joined by hundreds of others. From Virginia to New York, all across the country, people are pulling together, doing what they can to cope, doing what they can to help.
Everyone wanted to help. Some gave time, some gave money, and record numbers of donors gave life-saving blood, many for the first time. The unprecedented response helped engender a sense of unity and purpose all across the country. Let's take a look.
After Tuesday's events, I found the time and I made it convenient, and you guys made it easy.
There are very few of us can do anything, and this is all I can do.
I saw things on TV and I want to be able to help in some way.
I'd like to be on the search and rescue, but I'm not. So this is all I can do. And so I'm doing it.
This is all I can do was a refrain heard across the nation.
In the first day after the attacks, the American Red Cross received over 1 million calls from potential donors.
We're talking a minimum of 6-hour wait. If you can't wait today, come back tomorrow, the next day. This is not an event that's going to end tomorrow.
And in a scene replayed countless times in the grief-stricken cities of New York and Washington, D.C., donors waited patiently for an opportunity to contribute.
Oh, what a wonderful turnout. What we need are young blood donors who will stay with us forever. This is all about America. I mean, Americans have this kind heart, this philanthropic soul, and when they see their neighbors, their community, in the immediate environment or across the country that are in need, they come out and they give whatever they can to help, and they give a piece of themselves when they give a unit of blood, and this is what we have seen before, but we're seeing it in an enormous proportion today.
Well, I'm here to donate blood because I feel it's a patriotic, constructive gesture in light of what's going on. I feel like I'm doing my part the best I can.
The reason I'm giving is because of the situations that I've heard, and there was no other way that I thought that I could help, but I thought that I could help by giving blood.
It's pretty emotional. I think everybody's trying to remain very positive. Right here, we're in the heart of tragedy, so it just seems that everybody wants to do anything that they can.
Leading by example, congressional members and their staffs also rolled up their sleeves to pitch in. In a bipartisan show of support on Capitol Hill, the mood at the Congressional Blood Drive was one of duty and determination.
I just thought it would be a great way to allow members and staff alike to just have a way of participating. And so we got on the phone, called the Red Cross, and they were wonderful. There hasn't been any downtime at all, and the staff's been excellent. They just are super.
This is one of those things we can all do here in the Congress. We can help by donating blood, by raising the visibility. You know, lots of things we can do that are symbolic. This is that, and it's meaningful because what you take out of our arms is something that will save lives.
Well, I think the Red Cross in congressional partnership is a good example to people that this is one agency, one group that's there in times of war, in times of peace, but always in times of need and emergency. And I think it shows that Congress has confidence in non-governmental agencies like this that go out and do this kind of work that really benefit the American people.
By doing this, I'm saying thank you to the people in Vermont. But I'm also saying we're all in this together. This country has suffered a grievous, grievous wound. I've been in this room many times for hearings of some of the grimmest things in our history. I'm here today watching a sense of hope.
The past week has seen no shortage of indelible images and touching displays of kindness and courage. One such moment occurred in Merrifield, Virginia, where flight attendants gathered to honor fallen colleagues.
American Airlines flight attendants and cockpit crew have come today to show their solidarity for all humankind, but we knew the crew that was in the tragedy, and we wanted to do something to empower ourselves and show these monsters that we're not going to sit down and we're not going to be afraid, and we're going to go forward and we're going to be stronger. With just a couple of phone calls today, I have 50, 60 flight crews out here in uniform. We don't want their passing to go in vain, and this is one way we can take a stand and to help. We feel like we can help.
The frontline wasteland at Ground Zero was the focus of the early days of the New York relief operation. But now, the scope widens to the equally challenging work at the Family Assistance Center. No cameras are allowed inside this profoundly personal place, but its story is told by the Red Crossers who work there and by the expressions of love in the streets outside.
Traditionally, the Family Assistance Center would be a place for the family to congregate and collect, and they would be taking information as far as identification of missing people and things like that. With this type of situation, with it involving terrorist activity, there's been a little bit of a change in that the missing persons reports have started being filed, and now they're adding the DNA collection.
And actually what we're doing is we're trying to secure additional information that will make identification easier. We try and help them keep hope alive. We don't say things that will give them false hope.
There's rooms downstairs for people to go where they can look at lists that have identified people and non-identified people, so they can see if they can find their loved ones.
A lot of families just totally in distress, not knowing what to do.
And to constantly hear people's sad stories. We talked to our family member, they were on the 130th floor or the 103rd floor, and they called us and they said what to do. Then they called back and said, I'm having trouble getting out.
It's overwhelming. There are times when I wonder if I can continue to do it. Of course, I find the strength somewhere to keep on.
And we also have compassion rooms, comfort rooms, where we have skilled people that, such as mental health workers from the Red Cross, the chaplains, that are available to be with the families as they get news or as they contemplate the news that they may receive.
They need somebody there to just be able to touch their hand, to give them a hug, to allow them to cry. That at least they can know that during these most difficult times of this tragedy, when they look back at it, that there was somebody there for them.
The people in the city of New York have really been so appreciative. You get on the subway and people are thanking you. People thank you with tears in their eyes and say, thank you for coming to New York and helping us.
Well, that was a very nice film we just saw. Maybe we can talk about the blood program locally and nationally. What were some of the big issues that faced the blood program?
We were really challenged, Beth, by the large number of individuals wanting to donate blood, recognizing, I think most people recognize that there were a few people that survived in the New York Trade Center, and so the need for blood may have sounded initially like there was a high need for possibly those that were victims, but there was not a lot of blood used initially. But it was all the supplementary issues associated with this disaster. When you think about the whole New York area being shut down, the normal blood supply for that area of the country then would be easily depleted, and so the collections made across the country help feed the state of New York to make up the loss of again, businesses that may have had blood drives sponsored, and so consequently there was a real challenge to communicate how blood was being transported and shipped. Our region, as an example, sent the first 500 units to New York the very same day. Locally, we had about 220 companies and groups call wanting to sponsor blood drives. Many of those will move well into 2002, and just a tremendous increase in not only the giving of blood, but long-term planning of blood. And normally, Beth, what happens is nationwide, we're lucky to have a one-day inventory of blood products for hospitals. And this disaster has allowed the country to have now a 10-day supply. Let's hope there's not another tremendous need, but if there were to be one, we're at least 10 days out versus one day.
We're covered. We got a lot of extra blood for the
this
future.
Is good. And there's a story out there too about blood being destroyed. Every single unit of blood that was collected, a component of that blood was used, maybe not all of the product, because we did for a while over-collect based upon demand and frankly the capacity to process it and test it. But be reassured, it's public information, every unit was used, a component of that unit.
That's good. Are there other ways the Red Cross is involved that maybe most of our viewers aren't aware of?
I'll bet most viewers don't understand our role with the military. In my particular case, this is very close to me personally. I'm a national trainer for Armed Forces caseworkers around the country. We are the communication link between military personnel and their families, particularly members of the Guard and Reserve. When we look at what the President's talking about on a regular basis, he says we are calling up to active duty Guard members and reservists. That means the Red Cross works very closely with the families and the Guards members with financial needs, counseling needs, emergency communication needs, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Red Cross works very closely with the Guard, Reserve, and the active military. We have done that for a long time. And in my particular case, just 3 weeks before this disaster, I was in Arizona training 25 caseworkers for the military around the country and how we can better help our Guards members and reservists. So for me, this is a very personal topic and what we do helping our military families.
I didn't know that at all. I just thought the Red Cross was about blood.
Blood, yeah, and that's and Beth, your perception is probably where the majority of the public is at too. So we've really seen a challenge helping our local Guards members, reservists, and active military personnel.
Great.
It's been good to help. Feels good to help.
What efforts are made locally to respond to the disaster? And maybe you can give some examples to our viewers.
Yeah, Beth, when I'm out there talking in the community, I'll challenge people and I'll say, since September the 11th, name 2 disasters in St. Clair County that were chemical related. And people will look at you like you're asking them a question that doesn't even make sense. The fact of the matter is that at the Curtis Paper Company on September the 12th, there was a chemical problem at the manufacturing plant in Port Huron that evacuated the plant and affected many workers. And the Red Cross was there with its emergency systems responding. And then just a month ago at the Mueller Brass Company in Marysville, another chemical release that caused for in-house sheltering in the Marysville community near the industrial park and shut many factories down, and the Red Cross was there as well, providing emergency food for the workers and support to the companies and the people affected by that. So in our own community in the last 60 days, 2 chemical incidents didn't make front page news. The Red Cross
Everybody
was
was caught up in the
caught
big...
up on September 11th. And so our role is to respond to local disasters from single family fires to multiple family issues with a volunteer team and a volunteer corps, 24 hours a day.
It's good to know that you guys will be there even when there's something bigger going on.
Absolutely.
That's great. Well, thanks a lot for coming and answering all our questions. I'm sure a lot of the viewers now have a lot more information about the Red Cross. Thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks, Beth. And thanks to all the other students that helped too. Thank you.